Hi everybody, and welcome to week 2 of Myth and Ritual. This is where we actually start looking at ritual. Now, myth we kind of focused on a little bit more in week 1, and we focused a lot on myth and people's interpretations of the function of myth as a story that gives a culture sort of its identity and something to hang its sense of itself on. And you'll be finding in the reading this week that there's been a lot of disagreement over the years about whether or not myth informs human rituals, whether or not rituals actually inform human myths. They're kind of still going back and forth about this in this area of study. So if you feel like after the reading you're not quite clear on which came first, the myth or the ritual, the chicken or the egg, don't worry. Most other people don't know either. It's one of these mysteries of being a human being. At any rate, the thing that you need to be mindful of this week is ritual studies, whether it's in anthropology or social studies or religious studies or even in theater and the arts and that sort of thing, is about human behavior. It's about what you observe, it's about what you watch, it's about what you understand about how human beings act out the story of their culture, how they act out or perform their sense of cultural identity, the sense of who they are, of their values, of their importances. It's about watching. It's about human behavior. So there's going to be a little bit less reading this time around, just some background reading to give you an idea of what people are thinking about and the arguments that are existing about the function of myth and ritual. But this unit you're going to be doing the work of being an amateur anthropologist, and you're going to be watching and observing very carefully 3 different rituals. Now, I deliberately kind of still following in the biblical tradition as an introduction, as a case study for these 2 weeks. I picked 3 American Christian rituals. They're culturally familiar if you grew up here in the West, but I also picked these particular rituals for you to observe and document and look at very carefully because while they are all Christian, they are all very culturally different. And we're also kind of looking at little historical time capsules too. Vintage American Christianity, if you will. The 1941 High Catholic Mass you'll be observing is not how Mass is done anymore for the Catholics. This was filmed before Vatican II, back when the Mass was still done in Latin, when the ceremony was done with the backs to the congregation. It's simply not done this way anymore. They've changed that up since 1968. So you're watching a little snippet, but really interesting. You'll also be watching a classic documentary about Holiness Pentecostals in Virginia in 1967, who take the teachings of the Bible pretty literally in their rituals. And to some people, their rituals look strange, and to others, they look really exciting, and they offer something different than the Catholic Mass does. The other one that you're going to see comes from the African American historical tradition. We're going to see the practice not only of gospel singing, but of preaching and of movement and those important components of ritual in those traditions. So that's what you'll be looking at with regard to material today, and you're going to be watching, observing, documenting. There are components of different rituals that, while they look different from culture to culture, there are some components about how humans move, interact, make ritual that are the same. The components that are used include things like movement. You know, is it dance? Is it ecstatic movement? Is it exertion? Is it choreographed or is it spontaneous? Who is involved? Is it a ritual for many people? Is it a ritual for only a few? Is there an audience and a performer? Or is everybody encouraged to be involved? Who is allowed and who is not allowed to be involved in that particular ritual? Pay attention to things like this. Are there other components such as speech, the use of the voice, singing, music, storytelling, the making of visual work, the exchange between people? Is there dialogue between people? Is that allowed? Is there silence that is required? There are all sorts of components that you'll be able to see. Are there special costumes that are worn? Is this a type of ritual where you can kind of come as you are, and that's what's expected of you? Or is there a way that you were supposed to dress and behave and perform? Are there masks? Are there costumes? These are all just sort of little bits and pieces of ritual components that we'll be looking more, in a more focused manner, about a little bit later in the class. Right now we're just kind of taking an amateur observation approach. So you'll be watching 2 documentary films that are each about an hour long, and another snippet of a African American Baptist ritual that's about 10 minutes long. You'll be doing some reading this week, and we're going to be doing the discussion this week in VoiceThread. And there'll be a written assignment at the end of this unit where you do a compare and contrast paper on the 3 rituals that you observed today. So make sure that you observe carefully, that you watch carefully, that you take good notes, that you make observations of ritual behavior, but also contemplate your own responses to these, because we'll be talking about that in discussion. So enjoy week 2. I will see you in the discussion.